Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Today, get in on a savings account that others fund for you, Landlord tipflation, a follow-up to see how my last home price appreciation forecast actually performed, the surprising way that rents correlate with home prices, investors are now fueling a record share of property buys, and a heartwarming 50-year anniversary that I'm in awe of. Today on Get Rich Education. When you want the best real estate and finance info, the modern internet experience limits your free articles access, and it's replete with paywalls, and you've got pop-ups and push notifications and cookies disclaimers. Ugh. At no other time in history has it been more vital to place nice, clean, free content into your hands that actually adds no hype value to your life. See, this is the golden age of quality newsletters, and I write every word of ours myself. It's got a dash of humor, and it's to the point. To get the letter, it couldn't be more simple. Text GRE to 66866, and when you start the free newsletter, you'll also get my 1-hour fast real estate course completely free. It's called the Don't Quit Your Daydream Letter, and it wires your mind for wealth. Make sure you read it. Text GRE to 66866. Text GRE to 66866.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Italy's Sorrentine Peninsula to America's Florida Peninsula and across 188 nations worldwide. You're listening to the 491st consecutive weekly installment of the Get Rich Education podcast. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and when you invest in real estate with a strategy, which is what we've discussed here for over 9 years, you can't help but be a profiteer, even a wild profiteer. It might feel like so much money is falling out of the sky that you might need an umbrella to keep yourself from being hit with it. Raining Benjamins. In fact, with one of the 5 ways that you expect to be simultaneously paid, all right, let's not focus on the equity growth here, which has been torrid the last 4 years, not the cash flow, which has been slowed lately, not the tax benefits or the inflation profiting benefit. What else is there? That ROA, your return on amortization. When we talk about so much money falling out of the sky that you catch a case of affluenza, that ROA, it's really one of your quieter profit centers. It is like a savings account that someone else is funding for you. Let's say that you check an amortization table of your typical mortgage income property, and it shows that it has $400 of monthly principal pay down. All right, well, imagine if you had a number of economic actors, say you own 6 rental properties, and then you've got 6 tenants, 6 economic actors, perhaps people that you've never met, and all 6 of them are putting $400 a month into a savings account with your name on it. That is $28,800 a year that goes into your quote-unquote savings account. Yeah, nearly $30K a year that your net worth is growing by that you hardly even think about. And it's all just part of the profitable background noise that you hardly even hear, along with your leverage, appreciation, cash flow, taxes, and inflation profiting. Your tenant builds up your equity this way, even if your property didn't appreciate at all. And again, in your own primary residence, your ROA is 0 because you had to work to pay down your principal. Your tenant's not doing it for you. Now, this account that they're funding for you, it's not as liquid as a savings account, but it's perhaps more like an old bank CD, a certificate of deposit. It's your money, but you can't access it in a couple minutes. You would need to do a sale, or you could do a cash out refinance, and then it's yours. Your ROA is your tenant-made annual principal paydown divided by your equity. Okay, and what if you had more and larger properties than this small example I gave you that quietly increases your net worth nearly 30K every single year? Well, a lot of investors have more or larger properties where you might have 300K in annual principal paydown alone. The more rental properties you own, the more tenants you have that month in, month out, every single month, they fund a low liquidity savings account with your name on it. And think about it. How did you get in this advantageous position? Well, first you educated yourself. You know that they will rent the property from you. And how did you get the property? You don't own it outright. That typically implies too much opportunity cost to have the entire value of your property tied up and paid off. Although they rent the property from you, you got to rent 80% of the money from the bank to buy the property with, reap the reward, and you might have to use that umbrella to avoid getting rained on with the financial windfall. And residential real estate investors have been feeling the rain pouring down for the last 3-4 years. Many commercial real estate investors with short-term mortgages don't feel the same way. Now, when you're paid 5 ways, which has been enhanced by inflation since 2021, you don't really need tipflation on top of that. In fact, have you ever asked your tenant for a tip? Or has a tenant ever paid you a tip for providing housing for them? I wouldn't expect it. It hasn't happened to me. In fact, I've never heard of it. But if so, tell us about it. Write into us at getricheducation.com/contact. That's our contact page. A tip for your landlord? Now, think about it this way. You've got all these people asking for tips, really, since the pandemic began. That's when it really heated up. And then the pandemic receded, and yet the tip requests persist. Baristas, delivery people, fast food workers, and the parade of other micro interaction participants that you encounter throughout the day. Those people have no shame in asking you for a tip, and that's even if the service is poor. Now, I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't tip them, but they are micro interaction participants in your life because they're just handing you a coffee or they're handing you another drink that has too many ice cubes in it. On the other hand, what you do is you provide tenants with the roof over their head 30 days in a row, 24 hours a day. By buying the property, you educated yourself, you sunk in a down payment, you build up your own good credit to get a loan to provide housing for a stranger. Well, I guess you'll be asking your tenant a new question each month. Would you like to tip me 18%, 20%, or 25%? Landlord tipflation. No, I doubt that you're really going to do that. But this is the case, that compared to the service level from vendors that you interact with at a lower economic level, you sure could ask for this. Landlord tipflation. Let me know if it's ever happened to you. Now, starting at the end of 2021, near the end of each year here on the show, I have provided you with a home price appreciation forecast for the following year. Well, we have got the results now from last year. So let's check the performance. And yeah, don't you wish everyone that made predictions or forecasts, they reliably reviewed them and followed up with how they actually performed? That's what we're going to do here. Now, there are some things that I don't like to predict. In fact, I was the guest on Tom Wheelwright's show at the end of last year as his 2024 real estate predictions expert. And if you watch that, he really had to press me to get my mortgage rate forecast. I told him back then that 6% by the end of the year was my best guess, but that's all it was. Not formulaic, not a forecast, and not a 100% confidence level at all. So when we talk about GRE's home price forecasts and our track record, let me share a little context with you here first. so many other people, including some expert peers that I actually respect, they really got home price appreciation so wrong in this era, especially in 2021. That's when many forecast a home price crash. 2021, that's the year we had the highest home price appreciation in a long time, nearly 20% nationally. And of course, I have never called for any national home price downturn at all, even a mild one. I'm on record here on the show. Back in 2020 and 2021, that is when I shared the fact that, look, this administration, our elected officials, whether you like them or not, for better or for worse, they don't want to see people kicked out of their homes and living on the street. Back then, remember, like mortgage loan forbearance? But at the end of 2021, I forecast a cooling down of home price appreciation, and I told you then that I expected 9 to 10% for 2022, and at the end of 2022, the result was, indeed, 10% home price appreciation. And then at the end of 2022, we had already seen mortgage rates spike 2.5 times from their lows. And again, many said that was going to catch up with us, so that in 2023, home prices would just have to sink. No, they didn't sink. That's when I told you that the only housing crash was going to be a supply crash, and that higher mortgage rates actually correlate with higher home prices, not lower ones. That's what historically happens. And I said right here on the show that home prices absolutely can't crash. In fact, they won't fall at all. So 0% was my forecast for last year. No gain, no loss. We now have the number in, finally, for last year. Yes, real estate statistics can move slower than an Alaskan glacier. Well, it affirmed that indeed prices didn't fall. They came in up 3.5% last year. That's the result. We'll round it up to 4%. And we maintain a consistent data set here, the same measuring stick, and that is the NAR's national median single-family existing home price. Let me just add that, of course, I'm neither omniscient nor clairvoyant. I'm giving you the best information that my research can provide, and it's surely possible that I'll get it wrong sometime. I just haven't yet. Now, and you'll learn something about real estate here. Why do I use only the existing single-family home number? Therefore, why exclude new build homes? Well, in short, this is how you better compare apples to apples. New home construction changes over time, and in fact, the trend for the last decade is that new build homes are shrinking in size, and they're also being built closer together to each other when they're constructed. So you can see how this disrupts the apples to apples comparison. 10 years ago, the existing single-family home was about 1,600 square feet, and it's still 1,600 today. But 10 years ago, a new build single-family home was about 2,300 square feet, and it's just 2,000 square feet today, or 2,036 to be exact. So yeah, new build sizes have shrunk 12 to 15% in just the last decade. So this is why I use existing home numbers. And by the way, this shrinking trend, this is the opposite of the early 2000s trend when you saw a supersizing of homes about 20 years ago. That's when the term McMansion really increased in popularity there about 20 years ago, but it's the opposite now. The shrinking new home trend looks to pick up steam because, like I talked about a few weeks ago, affordability is down. Remember, it's worse than it's been since George Jefferson was on television 40 years ago. Let's not play the Jeffersons theme music again. The Deluxe Apartment in the Sky. We played that 2 weeks ago. Moving on up to the east side. I think that theme music, that meant Manhattan's Upper East Side. For those uninitiated on that, that has long been one of New York City's most affluent neighborhoods. Yes, then the Jeffersons were also funding their landlords' return on amortization and more. But getting back to today's new home construction, you can say that homes are experiencing shrinkflation today from about 2,300 square feet to 2,000 square feet in just a decade. And you can easily see that falling below 2,000 square feet within 2 years here. Yes, that type of shrinkflation is more impactful than you paying the same for your shrinking jar of Prego spaghetti sauce. Now that you understand why existing home sales numbers are used in GRE's home price appreciation forecast sourced by the NAR, you'll recall that at the end of last year, I forecast 4% home price appreciation for this year. We'll check back on that in 1 year's time. Now, that's amidst the fact that, understand, we've got high asset prices all over the place right now, almost everywhere you look. A record high U.S. stock market, near record highs in Bitcoin, and near record highs in home values. Yes, more home price appreciation is likely. In fact, real estate investor purchases are breaking records. I've got more to tell you about that later. In fact, there is even more fuel being poured onto the housing market right now. And this was breaking news a couple weeks ago in our Don't Quit Your Daydream newsletter. So if you're a reader, you saw it. And that is the fact that population growth drives real estate prices and rents. News broke that we just experienced the largest one-year population increase in all of American history with an astounding 3.8 million. Our population was up 3.8 million people last year, more than ever. In previous census estimates of a 1.6 million person increase had underestimated immigration flows. This was reported in Newsweek and elsewhere. Now, look, I've been directly investing in real estate since 2002, and I have rarely encountered a supply-demand inflection point like this that requires such attention from you. Locating an available property, that is already more elusive than finding the missing car keys, and it's going to get even more scarce. This has the appearance of an astounding real estate investment window that we are now entering. See, in most asset classes, the future is largely unknown, like in stocks, futures markets, derivatives, bonds, crypto, gold, oil, all kinds of other commodities. There are so many unknowns there, and real estate has unknowns too. But there are now 3 giant certainties for residential real estate in America going forward. Number 1 is more inflation. Number 2 is a prolonged scarce housing supply. And thirdly, it is astoundingly good demographics that fuel more demand. This third one is newer, and this is what I'm highlighting here. The demographics were already good, but it's just been turned up another notch. All 3 of these things are inevitable. And so many people try to predict the future, and they fail. But these 3 profitable real estate tailwinds for investors are as assured. They are as assured as you forgetting someone's name immediately after they introduce themselves. Yeah, the way to get around that is to recite their name back out loud as soon as you meet them. But what I'm getting at is that this is not hyperbolic to call this potentially a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Other high-income countries like Japan and so much of Western Europe, they are sweating buckets thinking about how their nation's aging populations are sending them over a demographic cliff. And besides just the magnitude of the population growth, again, the biggest one-year increase in American history, understand that America's largest group of immigrants are working-age producers, aged 25 to 54, and they are overwhelmingly renters, not homeowners. So this is your surge in rental demand. And this immigration surge, it may or may not last depending on policy, regulation, and the presidential election outcome late this year. Jeff Bezos discussed this one time. He discussed about how everyone wants to know the future. And understand this, you already know more about the future than what you think. Whether it's about your future business life, or your investing life, or your family life, or the way that you're thinking about technology and autonomous cars, or flying cars and machine learning and artificial intelligence. Within that, a lot of people, they ask themselves a question about the future, and they ask, what will be different in 10 years? Well, there's nothing wrong with that question. In fact, it's a perfectly good question. But instead, ask yourself the opposite. What will be the same in 10 years? Yeah, what will be the same in 10 years? Now, black swans aside, in real estate investing, it is indeed those three things: more inflation, a prolonged scarce housing supply, and astoundingly good demographics for rental demand. That's what will be the same. And now you have the basis for a sustainable wealth strategy. The bottom line is that even if it comes to a sudden stop, the addition of an all-time record 3.8 million Americans in 1 year, that has left an indelible mark on real estate demand, the economy, and nearly all of society. Residential real estate investors are going to own a scarce asset that everyone will need. You're listening to Get Rich Education. It's episode 491, and that means that we're just 9 weeks away from what is going to be a special, unforgettable episode 500. It's an episode that you'll probably want to listen to more than once, coming up in 2 months on May 6th. And I'll tell you, I really know how to put the performance pressure on myself for May 6th, don't I? Hey, I really want to give a shout out to our GRE listeners in Colombia. Last month, I spent 9 days in Colombia and 8 days in Ecuador exploring a coffee farm, checking out urban sites, and doing some Andes mountaineering, taking in the best of steak, coffee, chocolate, and fruits too. And I've got to say, when Colombians learned that I was there, you Colombians were amazing at reaching out, making me feel welcome, telling me how this show has helped you. Ecuador? I don't know. It wasn't quite the same. I love you and your beautiful nation, but frankly, I didn't hear much from the Ecuadorian listeners. I don't know why there was a big difference there, but I'm appreciative of some of the South American listenership for a show that's based on about 95% U.S. real estate here. Speaking of listeners and the show, at times we have listeners here on the show. If GRE has impacted your life and you'd like to come on the show and tell us about it, I and our audience like hearing from you and how an abundance mindset and real estate investing has changed your life. Write into us at our contact page. Again, getricheducation.com/contact, and tell us about yourself. We've had some really cool listener guests here on the show, like Grammy Award-winning music producer Blake LaGrange, the inventor of a home fitness system, Sean Finnegan, and even my former coworker that used to have a neighboring cubicle right next to me back when I had a day job, and a fertile who became a listener. If you think you're just maybe a boring accountant with a spouse and 2 kids, but GRE has influenced you, well, you're exactly who we want to hear from. Write in and let us know. Coming up next year, the surprising correlation between rents and home prices. Then investor purchases are breaking records and more. I'm Keith Weinhold. You're listening to Get Rich Education. I'll just tell you, for the most passive part of my real estate investing, personally, I put my own dollars with Freedom Family Investments, because their funds pay me a stream of regular cash flow, and returns are better than a bank savings account, up to 12%. Their minimums are as low as $25K. You don't even need to be accredited for some of them. It's all backed by real estate, and I kind of love how the tax benefit of doing this can offset capital gains and your W-2 job's income. And they've always given me exactly their stated return, paid on time, so it's steady income, no surprises while I'm sleeping or just doing the things I love. For a little insider tip, I've invested in their Power Fund. To get going on that, text family to 66866. Oh, and this isn't a solicitation. If you want to invest where I do, just go ahead and text family to 66866. For a lender that's a specific expert with income property, you need Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. In GRE history, from beginners to veterans, they provided our listeners with more mortgages than anyone. It's where I get my own loans for single-family rentals up to fourplexes. Start your pre-qualification and chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. They'll even customize a plan tailored to you for growing your portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com, ridgelendinggroup.com.
Hey everybody, this is Matt Bowles from Maverick Investor Group. You're listening to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. As I like to say, history over hunches. It's easy to have a hunch about how something works in real estate, but take a look at history and see what really happens. History over hunches. So to that point, you might be surprised at the correlation between the direction of rents with respect to home prices. Now, the cost of rent has grown over the last 12 years. That's not news to anybody, but many think that rents and home prices move inversely. If demand for home purchases falls, then rents rise, right? Nope. Instead, they move together. When rents move up, home prices tend to move up too. Rents rose gradually from 2012 to 2020, and they rose rapidly since 2020. Well, home prices, they behaved in a similar way. They also rose modestly from 2012 to 2020, and they rose rapidly since then. Rents and home prices have therefore been positively correlated. And in fact, I've been investing long enough to remember that when the home price bubble burst from 2008 to 2010, well, rents fell a little then too. And to underscore my point some more, both rents and prices bottomed together around 2011. Yes, I think most real estate investors believe that this positive correlation is less likely than that a movie about Barbie could ever reach $1 billion in sales. Well, that happened too. So I simply look at what really occurs when I do my research. It's history over hunches, and that's why these should not be mind-blowing discoveries. Just look at what really happens. So if your tenant balks that rents are rising, well, you know what? Home prices are probably rising too. The bottom line here with rents and prices being correlated is that whether it's to rent or own, we demand homes when the economy grows. That is the real history over any other hunch. Now, as a wealth building show here, I am empowering you with the information that you need to improve yourself. You can't follow the herd. You've got two choices. Either you can be a conformer or you can build wealth. Your wealth is not coming from anyone else. Chances are a rich uncle won't be helping you. In fact, getting an inheritance remains a rarity in the U.S. Yeah. As of 2022, data from the Federal Reserve shows only about a fifth of American households had ever received an inheritance at all, and it gets worse. According to NYU, the most common inheritance amount is between $10,000 and $50,000. Yeah, that's enough to fund your life for one average month or maybe one good month, depending on how you're living. The good news is that GRE listeners and others are getting the message because last month, Redfin reported that real estate investor purchases are breaking records. Yes, investors bought 26% of the country's most affordable homes in the latest quarter ended, and that is the highest share on record ever. We've got all these on record ever sort of things that we're talking about on the show today. Yes, Redfin let us know that low-priced homes are increasingly attractive to investors in today's environment. Redfin agents in Florida and California report that investors are the ones hungry for homes, but they can't find properties to purchase due to an ongoing housing shortage. But we can help you with available supply here at GRE. But these overall record investor purchase figures, they are according to a Redfin analysis of county home purchase records across 39 of the most populous U.S. metro areas, not just a couple states. There are a lot of investors out there fighting for properties, said a Redfin premier agent in Orlando, Florida. There just aren't enough properties to go around, which is putting a cap on how many homes investors can buy. In fact, single-family homes represented over 2/3 of investor purchases. So congratulations, you are acting, you are making it happen in this canyon, this chasm, this divide that's opening up between the haves and have-nots, shrinking the middle class. You are getting on the right side of that. I want to tell you more about being an investor shortly, but first, I have somewhat of a heartfelt real estate anniversary for you, and it has to do with my own family. March 5th, 1974 is a special day. You might note that tomorrow will be the 50th anniversary of that special date. Now, look, I can remember every single place that I've ever lived. The modest single-family home that I grew up in, college dorm rooms, a pathetic pool house efficiency apartment in Westchester, Pennsylvania, a condo, a house as an adult. Can you remember every place that you've ever lived? There's a good chance that you can. It's how intimate, really, and important real estate is to your life. And think about how significant you are. You're providing people with a home that they will always remember. This is key. Think about how this contrasts if you supplied the world with software packages or patio furniture. That stuff is forgettable. You're doing something significant when you help abolish the term slumlord and provide other people with that clean, safe, affordable, functional housing. Well, tomorrow, my parents, Kurt and Penny Weinhold, will have lived in the same home for 50 years. 50 years in the same home for my parents in sleepy and remote Appalachia, Coudersport, Pennsylvania. I asked my dad about that recently, and he said that when the paperwork with the lawyer was finished, he recalled walking into the house and happily shouting he was tired of renting. When I visit my parents annually in Pennsylvania, I am still sleeping in the same bedroom of the same home on the same block in the same small town where they still live in the first home that I ever remember. Great job, Mom and Dad. You committed, you married before you had my brother and I. You're still happy, you're still healthy, and you're still together. You're even in the same home I grew up in. I'm in awe. I won the parent lottery. 5 decades in the same home. You know where the creaky spots in the floor are of that old Victorian place. And when my brother's there, the 4 of us know right where to sit in our same spots at that same kitchen table. And you know, as tomorrow is an amazing 50 years there are some lessons in this. Find out what the great things in life are. Learn about them and commit to them. Like me trying to be the highest man on earth recently, or you buying the property, or getting married. So many of the most successful people get diligent and learn and then make lasting commitments. Being a real estate investing devotee is a commitment. Each property that you add is a small commitment itself. I encourage you to act. If it resonates with you, learn and grow your portfolio. There are always going to be naysayers that try to hold you to the confines of conformity and mediocrity. Don't fear uncertainty. Telling someone that times are uncertain is like telling someone that they're breathing air. Well, of course, no kidding. Each condition, uncertainty, and breathing air have persisted every day of your entire life. In the year 1920, 10 kilos of gold would buy you an average home. Today, 10 kilos of gold will buy you an average home. Home prices aren't high so much as the value of the dollar is simply down. Homes are not overvalued by the most timeless financial measure, gold. Mortgage rates, near 7%, are still below their long-term average, so go forth and build your empire. You can either teach a man to fish or give a man a fish. Here at GRE, we do both. We teach a man or woman to fish at GetRichEducation.com, which this show is a part of. And then at GREMarketplace.com, we give a man a fish. We have the supply of housing. You have access to the national providers with the lower cost real estate that makes the best rentals. And starting about 2 years ago, we added free investment coaching here, giving you that fish and making it easier than ever to get started or get your next property. Play a game worth winning and commit to something worthwhile. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to look into that at GREMarketplace.com. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.